Gentlemen, any last words before the big night? Just that I'm ready. I've never been more ready.
Okay, we'll see about that.
The year was 1988, and Hollywood was buzzing with a rumor that would shake the martial arts world to its core. A young Belgian fighter named Jean-Claude Van Damme stood in front of a group of reporters, his muscles flexing under the camera lights. His words were bold, almost reckless. "Bruce Lee was good for his time," Van Damme said with a confident smirk. "But if we had met in the ring, I would have destroyed him. His philosophy was beautiful, but real fighting? That's something different." The room fell silent. Reporters exchanged shocked glances. Did he really just disrespect the legend? The dragon who had changed martial arts forever? The man who millions considered untouchable even 5 years after his death? But what Van Damme didn't know was that Bruce Lee's closest students were listening, and they were about to teach him a lesson he would never forget. Before we dive into this incredible story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this one. Now let's see what happened when arrogance met legacy. The legend Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee wasn't just a martial artist. He was a revolution wrapped in a 135-pound body. Born in San Francisco in 1940 and raised in Hong Kong, Lee had transformed martial arts from ancient tradition into modern science. His Jeet Kune Do philosophy taught fighters to be like water, adaptable, flowing, and unstoppable. By the time of his tragic death in 1973 at just 32 years old, Bruce Lee had become a global icon. His films like Enter the Dragon and Fist of Fury weren't just entertainment. They were cultural earthquakes that shattered racial barriers and proved that Asian actors could be Hollywood superstars. More importantly, Lee had trained some of the greatest martial artists in America, including NBA legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, actor James Coburn, and his most devoted student, Dan Inosanto. Lee's training methods were decades ahead of their time. While other martial artists stuck to traditional forms, Lee incorporated Western boxing, fencing footwork, and even studied film footage of Muhammad Ali's fights. He designed custom training equipment, kept detailed journals of his workouts, and could perform one-finger push-ups that left professional athletes speechless. The challenger Jean-Claude Van Damme. Jean-Claude Van Damme arrived in Hollywood with dreams bigger than his accent was thick. Born in Brussels, Belgium in 1960, he had studied ballet and karate since childhood. His flexibility was extraordinary. He could do full splits that made grown men wince. His kicks were lightning fast, reaching heights that seemed to defy physics. But Van Damme had a problem. It was 1988, and Hollywood wasn't interested in another martial arts actor. They'd seen countless Bruce Lee imitators fail. Van Damme was sleeping in his car, taking any job he could find, desperately waiting for his big break. His frustration was growing, and with it, his mouth was getting bigger. At a martial arts demonstration in Los Angeles, Van Damme showcased his incredible 360-degree jump kicks and his famous splits between two chairs. The crowd was impressed, but when reporters asked how he compared to Bruce Lee, something inside him snapped. Bruce Lee was a philosopher, not a real fighter, Van Damme declared, his Belgian accent thick with confidence. "I trained in full-contact karate. I fought real opponents. Lee did movies. If we fought, it would be over in 30 seconds. The disrespect spreads." The interview was published in several martial arts magazines. Within days, it spread through the tight-knit martial arts community like wildfire. Gym owners posted the article on their walls. Students debated in dojos from California to New York. But nowhere was the reaction stronger than among Bruce Lee's original students. Dan Inosanto, who had trained directly under Lee for years, read the article with a mixture of sadness and anger. Inosanto was in his 50s now, a respected master who ran the Inosanto Academy in Marina del Rey. He had seen Bruce Lee do things that physics said were impossible, punching so fast that cameras couldn't capture the movement, generating power that sent men twice his size flying backward. "This young man doesn't understand what he's talking about," Inosanto told his advanced students during a private class. "Bruce wasn't just fast or strong. He understood combat at a level that took me 20 years to even begin to comprehend." Van Damme sees martial arts as performance. Bruce saw it as pure effectiveness. The other students agreed. There was Richard Bastillo, Ted Wong, and Jerry Poteet, all direct students of Bruce Lee, all now masters in their own right. They had a decision to make. Should they ignore this disrespectful upstart? Or should they teach him a lesson about humility? The challenge is issued. 2 weeks after the controversial interview, Van Damme received an unexpected phone call at the small apartment he was renting. The voice on the other end was calm but firm. "Mr. Van Damme, this is Dan Inosanto. I trained under Bruce Lee for many years. I read your comments about him in the magazine." Van Damme's heart jumped. He knew Inosanto's reputation. This wasn't some random caller. This was martial arts royalty. "I said what I believe," Van Damme replied, trying to sound confident despite his suddenly sweaty palms. Bruce Lee was great for movies, but real fighting is different. Inosanto's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. "I'm calling to offer you an opportunity. Come to my academy. We'll show you what Bruce Lee's methods actually looked like. No cameras, no press. Just honest martial arts between people who respect the art." Van Damme should have heard the warning in those words. He should have recognized this wasn't an invitation, it was a test. But his pride was too strong, and his need to prove himself was stronger. "I accept," he said. "When and where?" "The academy." The Inosanto Academy sat in a modest building in Marina del Rey. Nothing fancy from the outside. But inside, the walls told stories. Photographs of Bruce Lee teaching, training equipment he had designed, weapons from Filipino martial arts, and mirrors that had reflected the movements of legends. Van Damme arrived on a Saturday morning wearing his best training gear, his muscles pumped from a morning workout. He expected to find Inosanto alone, maybe with 1 or 2 students. Instead, he walked into a room filled with 30 of Bruce Lee's original students and their advanced practitioners. These weren't weekend warriors. These were men who had dedicated their lives to martial arts. The atmosphere was respectful but tense. Everyone knew why Van Damme was there. Everyone had read what he said. And everyone was curious to see if his skills matched his mouth. Inosanto stepped forward, wearing simple black training clothes. At 53, he moved with the fluid grace of water, exactly as Bruce Lee had taught him. "Thank you for coming," he said with genuine courtesy. "Before we begin any training, I want to show you something." He led Van Damme to a heavy bag hanging in the corner. It was a strange bag, reinforced with extra padding and chains that looked almost industrial. Bruce designed this bag because regular ones couldn't handle his power. "Watch." Inosanto, without any apparent wind-up or preparation, struck the bag with what looked like a casual punch. The impact sounded like a car crash. The 150-pound bag swung violently, its chains rattling as it traveled almost to the ceiling. Van Damme's eyes widened. That kind of power shouldn't come from such a small, relaxed movement. "That's just a fraction of what Bruce could do," Inosanto explained. "He could generate that impact from 1 inch away. Would you like to try?" Van Damme approached the bag confidently. He was strong. Years of weightlifting and karate training had given him impressive power. He wound up and delivered his best kick. The bag moved certainly, but nothing like what Inosanto had just demonstrated. The difference was embarrassing. The real education begins. For the next 2 hours, Van Damme experienced a martial arts education that shattered everything he thought he knew. Inosanto and the other students didn't mock him or try to hurt him. Instead, they systematically demonstrated why Bruce Lee's approach to combat was so revolutionary. They showed him the 1-inch punch, explaining the biomechanics of how Bruce generated full body power through minimal distance. They demonstrated trapping techniques that neutralized Van Damme's long-range kicks before they could even develop. They explained how Bruce Lee had studied fencing footwork to create angles that made traditional martial artists helpless. Richard Bustillo, another senior student, worked with Van Damme on timing. "Watch my hand," Bustillo said, holding his palm up. "Try to slap it before I pull it away." Van Damme tried 20 times. He never touched it once. Bustillo's reaction speed was beyond anything Van Damme had encountered. "Bruce was twice as fast as me," Bustillo explained calmly. His reflexes were tested in university studies. The researchers said they'd never seen anything like it. He could react to visual stimuli in 0.05 seconds. Average people need 0.25 seconds. But the most humbling moment came when Jerry Poteet, at 60 years old, demonstrated what Bruce Lee called sticky hands. No matter how fast Van Damme tried to strike, Poteet's hands were already there, deflecting, controlling, and countering. It was like fighting smoke. Bruce taught us that real fighting isn't about how high you can kick or how many push-ups you can do, Poteet explained patiently. It's about economy of motion, tactical thinking, and understanding human biomechanics at a profound level. You're young and talented, but you're thinking like an athlete. Bruce thought like a scientist who happened to use his body as a laboratory. The breaking point. After 2 exhausting hours, Van Damme sat against the wall, his ego thoroughly crushed. His muscles ached, his pride was wounded, and worst of all, he realized how ignorant his earlier comments had been. These weren't bitter old men clinging to the past. These were sophisticated martial artists who understood combat at a level he was only beginning to comprehend. Inosanto sat beside him, offering a bottle of water. "I didn't bring you here to embarrass you," he said kindly. "I brought you here because you have talent, and talent without wisdom becomes arrogance." Bruce always said that martial arts should be about constant learning and honest self-assessment. Van Damme looked at the floor, struggling with emotions he rarely allowed himself to feel. Shame certainly, but also something else. A deep respect that was only possible after being thoroughly humbled by people who had every right to be cruel but chose kindness instead. "I was wrong," Van Damme finally said, his thick accent even heavier with emotion. "I didn't understand. I thought martial arts was about being the strongest and fastest. But what you showed me today, it's something completely different." The apology. What happened next surprised everyone in the academy. Van Damme stood up, walked to the center of the training floor, and addressed all 30 people in the room. "I came here today thinking I was going to prove something," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Instead, you proved something to me. You showed me that Bruce Lee wasn't just a movie star or a philosopher. He was a true master who understood fighting better than anyone I've ever seen or heard about." He turned specifically to Inosanto. "I apologize for my disrespectful comments. I was speaking from ignorance and pride. I see now that what Bruce Lee created was far beyond anything I currently understand. If you would allow me, I would like to learn from you, not to become famous but to become better." The room remained silent for a long moment. Then Inosanto smiled, the first genuine smile since Van Damme had arrived. "That took courage," he said. "More courage than it takes to kick high or break boards. Admitting you were wrong, especially in front of people you disrespected, that's real strength." He extended his hand. "You're welcome here anytime. But I have one condition. Never speak about Bruce Lee's capabilities again unless you're speaking from actual knowledge, not assumption. Can you agree to that?" Van Damme shook his hand firmly. "I promise. And I promise to honor his memory by being honest about how much I still have to learn." The unexpected friendship. Over the following months, something remarkable happened. Van Damme began training regularly at the Inosanto Academy, not for publicity or to advance his career, but out of genuine desire to understand what Bruce Lee had discovered. He learned Filipino martial arts, Jeet Kune Do principles, and most importantly, the philosophy that martial arts should serve the individual rather than the individual serving a rigid system. The training was brutal. Inosanto and his students didn't go easy on the younger man, but they also shared knowledge that couldn't be found in any book or video. Van Damme's fighting style began to change. His famous spinning kicks became faster and more economical. His hand techniques incorporated trapping and deflection rather than just blocking. Most importantly, his attitude transformed from arrogant performer to humble student. Inosanto saw the change and was impressed. "You know," he told Van Damme during one training session, "Bruce would have liked you. Not the version that walked in here 6 months ago, but the person you're becoming. He always respected people who could admit they were wrong, and then do the hard work to improve." The public redemption. A year later, Van Damme got his big break. He was cast in Bloodsport, the movie that would make him an international action star. But before the premiere, he did something that surprised the entire martial arts community. He gave an interview to Black Belt magazine, the same publication where he had made his disrespectful comments about Bruce Lee. This time, his message was completely different. "I want to publicly apologize for what I said about Bruce Lee last year," Van Damme stated clearly. "I was ignorant and arrogant. After training with his students, particularly Dan Inosanto, I understand now that Bruce Lee was operating at a level I may never reach. His understanding of combat, biomechanics, and philosophy was decades ahead of its time. I'm honored to have learned even a small fraction of what he taught, and I will spend the rest of my career trying to honor his legacy rather than diminish it. The interview was picked up by martial arts publications worldwide. Inosanto called Van Damme personally. "That took guts," he said simply. "You didn't have to do that, especially now that you're becoming famous. But you did it anyway. That's character." The lasting impact. The story of Van Damme's humbling and transformation became legendary in martial arts circles. It demonstrated something that Bruce Lee himself had always taught, that true martial arts wasn't about ego or defeating others, but about conquering your own ignorance and limitations. Van Damme went on to have a successful career in Hollywood, starring in movies like Kickboxer, Universal Soldier, and Time Cop. But he never forgot the lessons he learned at the Inosanto Academy. In interviews throughout his career, he consistently spoke about Bruce Lee with deep respect, and often mentioned how Dan Inosanto's teachings had improved not just his martial arts, but his character. Inosanto, for his part, used the story as a teaching tool for his students. "This is what Bruce meant by be like water," he would explain. Van Damme was hard like ice, rigid in his opinions and unable to adapt. But when he experienced truth, he melted, became fluid, and could flow into new understanding. That's real growth. The transformation was so complete that years later, Van Damme would visit Bruce Lee's grave in Seattle, paying his respects and leaving flowers. Photographs from that visit showed a man who had learned one of life's most important lessons. That wisdom comes from listening, not from speaking, and that real strength is found in humility, not arrogance. The universal truth. This story resonates because it speaks to a truth we all understand, that assumptions and arrogance eventually meet reality, and reality always wins. Van Damme had assumed that physical ability was the same as mastery. He thought that because he could kick high and do splits, he understood martial arts at the deepest level. But Bruce Lee's students showed him that mastery is about constant learning, about understanding principles rather than just techniques, and about respecting those who came before you. It's a lesson that applies far beyond martial arts. How many times in life do we dismiss someone's wisdom because we think our limited experience is superior? How often do we speak confidently about subjects we barely understand? Van Damme's story reminds us that the wisest path is to remain humble, to listen more than we speak, and to be willing to admit when we're wrong. The final message. Today, both Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dan Inosanto continue to teach martial arts and share the philosophy that Bruce Lee developed. Their relationship evolved from confrontation to mutual respect to genuine friendship, a friendship built on the foundation of one man's willingness to admit he was wrong and another man's grace in forgiving him. The clash between Van Damme and Bruce Lee's students is still remembered not because it was a physical fight, but because it was a spiritual and philosophical awakening. It proved that Bruce Lee's legacy wasn't just about movies or fighting techniques. It was about a way of approaching life with honesty, humility, and endless curiosity. As Dan Inosanto often says when teaching, Bruce Lee's greatest gift wasn't his speed or power. It was his ability to make you question everything you thought you knew, and then give you the tools to discover truth for yourself. Jean-Claude Van Damme learned that lesson the hard way, but he learned it completely. And in doing so, he became not just a better martial artist, but a better man. The lesson is simple but profound. Respect costs nothing, but arrogance costs everything. Never judge someone's worth by what you see on the surface, because true mastery often wears humble clothing. If this story of humility, growth, and redemption touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Have you ever learned a hard lesson about respecting others? Share your story in the comments below. We'd love to hear it. And remember, the wisest person in the room is often the one who admits they still have much to learn.